In the final game of the biggest Fortnite tournament of 2022, Queasy and Veno unexpectedly switched their drop spot up to land on the current first place team, Cammy and City.
What is this? What is this? Queasy, Veno are trying to take it by force!
If they win the fight, they win the entire event.
Only win in one way, and that's taking that crown! Veno is here!
The first mistake.
Queasy is here! Down goes City! It's a big trade! It's a one-on-one!
He's trying to bait it. He's trying to bait the revive so that way Cammy might peek.
The second mistake.
Breaks through the wall. Shot's gonna be fired! And they do it! Become legends!
In the lead up to this event, Queasy and Veno were undoubtedly the favourites to win it all, and this wasn't the first time that they had fallen at the last hurdle. In the first year or two of Fortnite's release, there was really no competitive structure or practice for players to start improving and getting better. All there were zone rule scrims where you weren't allowed to fight until a certain point of the game. These were often considered horrible, atrocious, unrealistic practice, but this is where Queasy developed a ton of the fundamentals that he knows to this day.
Like I was playing like all the time before, like Arabic customs every single day, like 10+ hours we just play duo scrims.
This meant by the time he got to his first FNCS finals in Chapter 2 Season 2 back in 2020, he was already an extremely smart and proficient player. Teaming up with Trulex at the time, in their first FNCS Grand Finals, the biggest tournament of the season, they ended up with a second place finish, just narrowly missing out on the championship title. An extremely impressive performance for his first final, but it wasn't a win. Across the next few seasons, the game mode changed from duos to solos, and then officially to trios. Despite making the FNCS finals in every one of these seasons, he wasn't able to consistently place in the top 10, largely due to not having great synergy with the teammates, and having a particularly bad mentality in solos.
I got sniped twice. I got
That was until Chapter 2 Season 6, where he re-teamed up with Trulex and added Juriki to the mix. Queasy and Trulex have already played so many games together that their synergy was unmatched, and in their search for a third player to play with, they had offers from some of the biggest names in the region, but they knew what their team required.
And that same season also we got DMs, me and Truly got DMs from like Tayson and Aqua, and we decided to like just play with Jerky because like he was like the best free builder 1v1 creative player back then, and that's what we needed. And our goal in our head when we wanted to play, we were like, we need this guy. He's gonna be cranking sky limit for hide like every single game, and me and Trulix are just gonna go front and spray, and we're gonna win every game.
They may not have been able to win every game, but they did manage to win 3 of the 12 matches across the weekend, and clearly their confidence in picking up an at the time more unknown player paid off. After narrowly missing out on an FNCS championship by placing second 1 year prior, Queasy had now won his first major Fortnite tournament and was now a one-time FNCS champion. However, as is very common with FNCS championship winning teams, once they've achieved their target, they struggle the next season to continue that grind. They end up placing 15th out of 33 teams and decide it's best to split as a trio. But it wasn't all bad. Queasy ended up then teaming up with Thomas HD and Anas, 2 of the best players in Europe. Yet again, they're predicted as a top team to win it all, and come the Grand Royale, the final tournament of 2021 and Chapter 2, they won the final game with 14 eliminations, unfortunately only placing 3rd overall in the leaderboards, narrowly missing out on the championship title for a second time. But this was a good lesson learned about hard work.
Everyone in that trio, we worked hard, and like obviously not hard enough because like we didn't win.
Veno's story across this time had a lot of similarities. The world really started to learn his name around Chapter 2 Season 7, mid-2021, when he started working in Fortnite coach Destiny Jesus' friend group. Now, self-admittedly, DJ says that even coming into this group, Veno was already a phenomenal solo player, and it only helped him a small amount. He was an extremely talented player, yet was never able to showcase this in a major tournament. However, with DJ's coaching, combined with a friend group of some of the best players in the region, that was all about to change. In the last game of the finals, the entire championship would depend on the final 1v1 between 2 members of that coaching group, Veno and the GOAT of competitive Fortnite, Tayson. Whoever wins the 1v1 wins the tournament.
Have to be Veno going for the win right now in order to catch up. He's going for Erkin as well. If he gets 3, that could be it. He's moving forward, forcing the placement. Tayson on all.
He misses the final shot. And let me, from 2021, tell you exactly why that shot was so important.
He completely ended up whiffing, and that was a $30,000 shot.
With Fortnite Chapter 2 coming to an end, Epic Games announced that Trios was no longer going to be the main competitive mode, and instead, the main mode for Chapter 3 would be Duos. Since Queasy had clearly established himself as one of the best in-game leaders in Fortnite, this gave him a large amount of options for picking up a Fragger duo.
Me and Veno were gonna play the first season Duos, but I decided to go with Han. In my head, Veno wasn't good enough. Or like, he didn't have the placements to prove it, you know? But I knew he was good. Like, in my head, like, it was either him or Han, but Han had the placements to prove it, so I decided to go with Han.
And this seemed to be the right call. Their playstyle was extremely height dominant, and very similar to the playstyle that won Queasy the FNCS in Chapter 2 Season 6. They would go on to dominate Chapter 3 Season 1, and it all came down to a final solo clutch that Hen had to pull out in order to win the entire tournament.
And has it, 1v1, 297 points. This is for the European Championship. All he has to do is take down Walks, solidify it. He has enough points already, but do it in style, my friend. The VR is just in your grasp. Hen as a solo against the world, and he wins the European FNCS.
But all good things must come to an end. In the next season, Chapter 3 Season 2, Aqua, who many people considered the best height player, returned to competing, picking up Veno as his duo. There's only room for one team on top of the lobby, and Aqua's style of taking it was incredibly aggressive, often just 50-50ing whoever was there. This very aggressive strategy won them 2 of the 6 games on the first day. Unfortunately for Queasy and Hen, since they hadn't practiced this much this season, a massive change in removing the cars midway through FNCS meant they really struggled with far zones as they hadn't practiced these. And even when they did have a good game, Aqua and Veno outclassed them on height. They ended day 1 in 41st place, whilst Aqua and Veno topped the leaderboards. They did have one of the best comebacks on day 2, firing all the way up to the 8th place on the leaderboard. However, still not a stellar finish for 2 previous season's champions. And no surprise, the team at the top of the leaderboard was the other height dominant team, Aqua and Veno. But to everyone's surprise, this duo would split in the next season. The reason Aqua had initially quit is because he repeatedly had a bunch of hand and wrist issues, which meant that he wasn't able to play the game for extended periods of time without lots of pain. To coincide with this, after the disappointing finish of placing 8th amongst a host of other personal reasons, Hen and Queasy also split. With Queasy looking for a new fragger, personally I thought I was the best in the world, but apparently I wasn't the best option.
I was actually gonna go play with Jerky. When we like decided to play, I was literally on Twitter making a tweet, Queasy X Jerky, shifty shafts all season or whatever. And then I got a DM from Veno like, yo, are we playing? And I was like in call with Jerky. I was like, well, I just got a DM from Veno, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, I want to play with you, but I have to play with Veno. And I literally just switched the tweet, Queasy X Veno, shifty shafts all season.
You see, the playstyle and construction of Queasy and Hen and Aqua and Veno are relatively similar. Queasy and Aqua were both IGLs that were very height dominant, and Hen and Veno were both really talented fraggers who knew how to play height as well. In my opinion, Veno was an upgrade over Hen, and Queasy was an upgrade over Aqua, essentially meshing the 2 best players on the previous 2 seasons' FNCS champions. In their first season together, they showed truly how dominant they were in the duo cash cups, placing 6th, 2nd, 1st, and then another 2nd. These matches are lower level than an FNCS Grand Finals and are significantly easier to win, but repeated performances like this showed that they clearly had the capabilities to win the FNCS Grand Finals this season. However, come to the finals and yet again they fall short, ending up 3rd. You see, they were easily able to dominate the lower level cash cups, however in finals they weren't able to play this exact same playstyle as things were definitely different. This season they were only able to get 1 victory royale, and on average you're going to need 2.4, so somewhere between 2 and 3 wins to actually win the entire FNCS. Now this depends on playstyle, but since these are 2 height dominant players whose strategy largely revolves around winning games, the fact that they only got a single victory royale clearly showed that their game plan needed some work. A disappointing finish, just missing out on the championship title yet again, but the next season would be the FNCS Invitational, the first in-person event Fortnite has had in 3 years since the World Cup in 2019. 2014. One of the main reasons they were predicted to win is because there were minimal height teams in this lobby. If you looked at the player list, not many of these teams were really dominant height teams. The two main other contenders were Aqua and Reason and Tayson and Chapix. However, these two teams were fighting each other off spawn, resulting in them not being in every single endgame, opening up high ground for Veno and Queasy to run away with it. But there's one thing that they hadn't counted on. One of Europe's best teams, Cami and Seti, had been switching around their playstyle all year. Historically, in the endgame, they'd played low to mid-ground layers and tried to dominate these. This is a great playstyle if you want to consistently get deep into endgames, however it's incredibly difficult to win games from this position. It was possible to win a tournament, but without a lot of massive point games, it was almost impossible to be consistent enough to win. They took a complete 180 on their entire playstyle and hired coach BloodX to teach them how to play height. Now equipped with a full package being able to play any layer in endgame, they dominated.
High ground was taken away by Cammy and Seti. All they have to do is close out this game. Ascended trying to take control, trying to fight for the high ground, but it's not enough. Cammy and Seti take their fourth victory royale.
Queasy and Veno had managed to keep up throughout the majority of the tournament, keeping them close behind in second, but unfortunately, we already know how this tournament ended. For teams like this, winning is all that matters, and the post-game interview says it all.
I mean, you must be very proud as well, Veno, of what you boys achieved here at Invitational.
No. The next season was Chapter 4, and this remained duos, keeping Queasy and Veno together. A top 2 placement in the FNCS's first major will qualify them for the Global Championships at the end of the year. You would think with the disappointment of the FNCS Invitational, combined with this opportunity to qualify, motivation would be at an all-time high. But it turned out that wasn't the case.
First of all, I didn't work hard enough that season, in my opinion. I hated the season so much with hammers, so like, in my head it was like, oh, I'm gonna get chopped, there's nothing I can do about it. So I didn't even bother. I think if I played, we would have won that season easily. So I kind of got a reality check.
They were able to scrape a 4th place finish, however missing the qualification for the Global Championships. But after this FNCS, Veno actually wanted to drop Queasy and to team up with Cammy instead. Once the news eventually got back to Queasy, he realized he had been complacent in that previous season and had not put in the work required to win. In a complete parallel to Cammy and Seti, the team that had just beat them at the FNCS Invitational, they hired coach BloodX to give them a game plan and to figure out how to truly play the grand final. Throughout Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 2, Queasy and Veno put in more work than is healthy or sustainable. This season's FNCS had a format that had 3 weeks. Based on your performances here would dictate if you either went through to the grand finals if you came in the top 40, or if you came 41st down till 90th, you would go to the Surge Week, which was essentially a semi-finals. Across the 3 weeks, they placed 3rd, 1st, and 7th, meaning they were significantly ahead of everyone else on the series point leaderboard, skipping Surge Week and easily being the top team predicted to win this season's FNCS Grand Finals. The following 12 games were about to be the best performance in Fortnite history. The entire season, they've been landing at Kenjutsu Crossing. No one dared contest them, however come finals, Dre and Darky end up landing to these houses on the left side here, cutting off a huge amount of their loot. For most teams, this would disadvantage you massively, but this almost seemed to give Veno and Queasy a boost. This was Dre and Darky's first FNCS Grand Finals, so naturally they're a little bit nervous, and this is something that top teams can capitalize on. For reference, this is Queasy's 15th FNCS Finals and Veno's 7th. All they did was grab a small amount of loot and disengage over to this west tower. However, this was a massive mistake. Once they've arrived here, they realized that Jalen was already holding an angle onto this area, which combined with Queasy and Veno's quick push meant that they were completely pinched on a small island that they couldn't escape from. With minimal time investment, Queasy and Veno managed to pick up 2 easy eliminations. Now, since each elimination is worth 4 points in a grand finals setting, this was already a massive start for them, and they'd barely invested any ammo or time into this fight.
We didn't even want to kill them after that. We just sat there milking them every game.
But why was this team landing here? And more importantly, why is Queasy and Veno landing here? Well, Dre and Darky wanted to ensure that they could get kinetic blades, the only source of mobility this season, from the guaranteed spot to the south. The reasons are the same for Queasy and Veno, but they're much smarter. You see, the main building here has 10 kinetic blade spawns, and there are 2 different rarities of kinetic blades. The rare, which is blue, and the epic rarity, which is purple. Now, the purple has 3 charges, whereas the blue has 2, and with the large amount of kinetic blade spawns here, this gives them a higher chance of both of them having the purple variant. Now, if you look at distribution on the map, this is the only spot that has this amount of kinetic blade spawns, meaning they have a massive advantage. Now, you may not think one more charge is that big of an advantage, but when it comes to endgame, it absolutely is. With 5 eliminations and a 5th place finish in game number 1, they were in 3rd place. But it would be game 2 where the purple kinetic blade's power would truly be shown. In Fortnite, there are 4 storm circles that move. The 9th, 10th, 11th, and the final one, the 12th. First moving zone, which is the 9th circle, Queasy and Veno can use the purple kinetic blades to travel the entire distance without even touching the floor. If they only had the blue, they would have to drain some materials boxing up halfway through this zone. And these materials are extremely important because they use these to actually tunnel a little bit deeper into the 10th zone. Now, the next moving zone continues to move in the exact same direction, and because they've tunneled this little bit deeper, they are now ahead of every other team. But why would you even bother wasting your materials to do this when you have kinetic blades to fly through the sky? Well, that's exactly the problem. Everyone at this moment is using their kinetic blades to fly through the sky. And this means there's a huge risk of you landing at the front side of zone, the side of zone, and another player landing on your head. So to avoid this, you need to be the last player to use your kinetic blades, which is why Queasy and Veno stayed here, invested a little bit of materials, because all of the other players in the lobby are using their kinetic blades to fly, but since they've tunneled further into the zone, this means they have more time before the zone catches up to them, meaning they don't have to use their kinetic blades as quickly as everyone else. But there's another way in which this is genius. Because they're the last ones to use their kinetic blades, if they shoot out height right before they rotate, they ensure that not only are they the last team using their kinetic blades, they're the highest in the sky. But here's the real Kenjutsu Crossing secret. Remember those 3 kinetic blade charges rather than the 2 that the majority of other players have in the lobby? Well, when you combine that with the timing of being the last one to use your kinetic blades and the fact that you've just shot out high ground, this means that you're guaranteed to be the highest team in the lobby with no one above you, which means that when they fall down, they are always guaranteed to land on height with no one landing on them from above them. From then on, Queasy stays all the way up, and in the final moving zone, Veno drops down to frag out and get the final few eliminations and clean up the first victory royale of the weekend. Despite winning this game, they're not actually in first place yet, as they're behind Blatcha and Mixon by 1 single point. They were off to a great start, but that was about to all change. Game 3 would be their worst of the day. After Veno goes down from an unfortunate fight in the mid game, they struggle with low materials in the end game, and after getting a refresh at back zone, just kind of died to the storm. Still, a 15th with 5 eliminations keeps them in 2nd place. But this is when one of the most insane win streaks in Fortnite history was about to begin. In game 4, rather than the second moving zone continuing the same direction as the previous, it pulls back over itself. Since they were already on 2nd height and the team is just connected to them by a few walls, they can easily chop this out. Given this is the start of the 10th zone, the exact same time that they took high ground in game number 2, Queasy can triple katana up into the sky and connect to some old builds, guaranteeing them height. Whilst Queasy stays up on high ground to secure the win with a heal off, Veno drops down to disrupt the players below and wipes them all out of the lobby, securing their 2nd victory royale of the tournament. With confidence high and the momentum rolling, they make aggressive plays in game number 5 to secure themselves a refresh on materials before the moving zones. However, they get overconfident and make a mistake. In the 9th zone, the first moving zone, they see no one has established on high ground, so they land on it to claim it, in the process using a ton of those materials they got earlier on. But remember, they usually take height in the 10th zone, and taking height this early means someone can use their own strategy of chopping them out against them. But don't count them out yet, they already know how to play against their own strategy. They land at the front side of the zone, and since they are the 2nd highest team, height has built on top of them. This means that they can just edit them out and spray them as they're falling out of the sky. And when is this done? The start of the 10th zone, the exact same time they've claimed high ground in their other 2 wins. Since Queasy's using the shadow tracker, which by the way is insanely busted, this marks them, so then when Queasy uses his 3 kinetic blade charges to fly into the sky, he can easily find the player who's already weak, land on his head, and 1-pump him. Now this game does admittedly get a little bit messy, it's not as clean as the previous 2, but this time when Veno goes down to frag, Queasy joins him as he has no heal off potential all the way up on high ground and wins the 2nd game in a row. Prior to the final game on day number 1, they were already 117 points ahead of Vanyak and Karmi in 2nd place, and a win in Game 6 would almost put them in an unbeatable position coming into day number 2. They learned from their previous game. In the 9th zone, they shoot out the high ground team, but because they don't have 3 kinetic blade charges and too many players are kinetic blading through the sky, they do not try to retake high ground and instead just land at the front side of zone and create a bunch of space to work from. They tarp a little bit deeper into zone and set up for their classic high ground retake, but realize they're on a bad layer as there's too many players above them, so after spraying out the height team, decide to rotate only using a single kinetic blade charge. After staggering here for a little bit and letting the zone catch up, they use another single kinetic blade charge to land again at the front side of zone. As they've been doing this, they've slowly elevated to the point that they are now second high ground, meaning that, as you guessed it, yes, the height team has connected on top of their head, giving them the opportunity to chop them out. Now, since they've only been using a single kinetic blade charge on every rotate, at this point it's fully recharged, meaning they can triple blade straight up into the sky and, yes, guarantee be the highest again. But there is one problem. They have 0 eliminations so far, meaning there's been 0 points in this game where they've been able to get their materials refreshed. With this in mind, Queasy spots materials down in the backside of zone, and after popping a slurp juice, makes an extremely aggressive play to dive straight back down and pick up a bunch of them. He is spotted by other players at the backside of the zone, but the slurp juice he popped earlier keeps him alive, allowing him to get straight back up onto high ground. As always, Veno drops down to frag out on the players down below, and it all comes down to a 2v2. Veno and Queasy versus Cammy and Seti. Veno hears them pop 6 chug splashes down below, which shows that they do not have anything to win the heal off with, meaning Queasy up on top just has to sit there and throw the chug splashes to win the game. However, Seti runs up from the backside of zone and gets a massive tag off onto Queasy. Luckily, the slurp juice he has popped gives him enough HP just to win out this 1v1 as Seti goes down to the storm, giving Queasy and Veno their 4th victory royale of the day, 3 of these being in a row. The most victory royales ever done in an FNCS, which included European players, was Cammy and Seti at the FNCS Invitational when they won 4, and the most in Europe itself is 3. Queasy and Veno have just won 4 with 6 games left to go. But this is where problems may arise. You see, across a 2-day event, teams often change up their strategies off spawn, meaning that Kenjutsu drop spot that they've had so easily on day number 1 may be a completely different story for them on day number 2. If they lose a bunch of games off of spawn, another team could easily overtake them on the leaderboards. Twitter didn't help. Firehunter, who was currently in 49th place, 1 away from the bottom after day number 1, replied, "Does he know?" in response to a potential drop map for day 2. Now, Firehunter landed at Kenjutsu Crossing earlier in a solo cash cup, a different tournament, so naturally, Queasy and Veno began to think that he was going to contest them on day 2 and ruin their tournament. The nerves definitely got to Veno as he ended up throwing up before game number 7.
But I know like Veno's gonna show up anyway, don't matter if he's nervous or not.
But not only did Firehunter not land here, Darky and Dre also left this area, leaving them the entire drop to themselves. Queasy was right. Nervous or not, Veno put on an absolute fragging masterclass, picking up 8 eliminations by himself, making a grand finals lobby look like he's playing some pub zone wars match, and winning game number 7. At this point, there was a lot of criticism on the team, however. Most of the zones that they'd played well in were home zones, meaning the zones pooled near their drop spot of Kenjutsu Crossing. However, game 8 was a Breakwater Bay zone, which is the complete opposite corner of the map. And what do you know? Who wins the game? Queasy and Veno. At this point, there's been 8 games played, and 6 of them have been won by Queasy and Veno. They are over 200 points ahead of Moustache and Tayson, who are in second, the current reigning FNCS champions. With 3 games remaining, they were tired, exhausted, and started to lose concentration, making a lot of stupid mistakes. But they had already won the tournament in the first 9 games. They didn't even need to play the last 3. This was undoubtedly the best performance in Fortnite competitive history, and Epic Games continually changing the meta actually was some of the reason that they were so successful.
Like the season before, like the Hammer season, for example, you just grinded like the first month, you learn everything, and then you just like go AFK until grinds. But like this season kept switching and switching and switching, so it was really fun to actually like relearn everything.
But of course, the strategy wouldn't be successful if it wasn't for their insane amount of hard work with Coach Bloodex. One of the main things that they put into practice in scrims was ensuring every game was as realistic and as close to their playstyle in grand finals as possible.
We literally tried everything. We didn't go for island one game. We only did the rotates we know we're gonna do. We used the loadouts we're gonna use. We didn't play any SMGs, pistols. We only played red eyes. We just played like very like how you would play in grinds, because one of the mistakes we also had the season before was in cash cups. We used to run gold SMG only, you know? We didn't run the red eyes. So in grinds, when we had red eyes on height, we couldn't get a refresh. But like we literally had even Bloodix in the call, like one of the games we were like 555 last moving. He started screaming at us, split your mats, like you're not playing 555. And then we went to split match and we got post rifle in the front and we died.
Of course, coming first and winning this tournament not only means they're champions, it means they've qualified for the Global Championships at the end of the year, a $4 million in-person event in Copenhagen. Naturally, I asked Queasy whether the grind they put in this season was sustainable for the next 6 months.
Next season, I think I'll put like definitely a lot of time, but I don't think I'd put as much as this season, just because like it's only the win factor. And for Copenhagen, like I'm putting 120% in.